Parents, stop trying to get your kids in shape. You're doing it wrong. Almost everybody does this wrong, and it backfires. Instead, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about how to get, let's start with the first one. And by the way, we're going to list like really effective strategies to helping your children become more healthy and fit based on actual data, but also based on our experience training lots of people, lots of families for over 2 decades, and messing up a lot and then figuring out how to do it the right way. But number one is to be the example. So when a child grows up in a home that has any kind of particular behavior, even if the parents chastise the behavior or communicate to the kids, don't do this, even though they do it themselves, the odds, and the data on this is very clear, the odds that the child will follow in the footsteps of their parents is incredibly high. Children listen to actions far more than they listen to words. So if you want your child to lead a healthy lifestyle, 90% of all of your success is going to be leading it yourself and being the example.
Neurons that fire together, wire together.
Yeah.
That was in the book that I'm reading right now with Raising Children. And that's one of the things they talk about is that if the kid sees a pattern in a behavior and then makes that connection, it is now wired, especially if it's a first experience. Example they gave in the book is like, you know, your kid gets done with their first sporting event or they did something and you take them to ice cream. It's like the first, now every time they do that, they will
drives me crazy.
They will expect it because that's the first connection they've made is, oh, after volleyball practice, I get ice cream. And I'm not using that as an example to say that's bad per se, but just keeping that in mind that when we introduce things to our kids or we show things to our kids, when it's the first connection or the first thing they make, or hey, we'll go out to dinner this Friday, and the first place you take them is McDonald's, you now have wired that of like, oh, Friday's a fun night, we go out there, it's that experience, and it's now solidified that this is a behavior they expect going forward.
That's right. Yeah. But to get even more, to make it even more important, or should I say, to really hammer this home, that what you're communicating, Adam, I think a lot of people on the surface would get that. Like, okay, don't take my kids to eat certain foods or don't reward them with certain things or activities that are not necessarily healthy, which makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people would say that makes a lot of sense. But what a lot of people don't realize is that, let's say you don't even do that, but you yourself eat particular ways or inactive in particular ways, and they observe your behaviors. In fact, when you look at the data on body image issues, for example, they have some data on girls and body image issues and eating disorders. One of the strongest connections, there's a lot of things that can contribute to it, but one of them is how mom talks about herself. So it's not about how mom talks to her daughter. That's an obvious one. I think everybody knows if you tell your kid or that you can very much impose a body image issue on your child or cause them to have poor self-image by the way you talk to them, that's obvious. But a lot of kids will internalize what you say about yourself. So mom looking in the mirror and saying, you know, even under her breath, oh my God, I'm so fat. Or looking at a picture with her family, oh my God, look how fit I was there. I'm so gross now, or whatever. The child hears that and starts to adopt it. And the same is true for your behaviors with activity, with nutrition. I remember having this conversation with a client myself. This woman had hired me and I had been training her for maybe 3 or 4 months. And she had come in with her kid. And oftentimes I would have clients bring their kids to the workouts. I used to own a private studio and I never wanted that to prevent people from exercising. It was my studio. I didn't mind it. I love kids anyway. It was small, so it didn't really get in the way. So I tell my clients, hey, if you need to bring your kid, you can go ahead and bring your kid and we'll set them over here and I'll make sure that they have fun while we work out type of deal. So she brought her son who was, I think he was like 10. And then he comes in with, you know, chicken nuggets from McDonald's, which I didn't even think twice about. It's like, I'm not watching it and judging. A lot of people think trainers judge everybody. That's not the case. She just brought him in. He was sitting there, but she came to me and she said, Sal, can you now please tell my son why he shouldn't be eating this? And she put me on the spot. And so I looked at the kid and I said, you know, there's other good options. And then I kind of changed it. I said, you like those? They taste good, right? He's like, yeah. I said, okay, cool. And so changed the subject, moved away. And then I looked at the mom and I said, who bought those for him? And she said, I did. And I said, this is not an issue with your child making the wrong decisions. He's being provided these options. And so, and you know, she looked at me and kind of understood it. But really it's about being the example yourself. When you have two healthy parents in a home, the odds that the children will be healthy are astronomically high. When you have two unhealthy parents in a home, the odds that the children will be unhealthy are also astronomically high. And this is why they try to say it's genetics. Well, obesity is genetics, which is actually false. There are genetics that can contribute to whether you gain more or less weight, but obesity as we know it is not genetic. It's a relatively modern phenomenon, and it follows families because of the behaviors of the people that lead the families, the parents.
Yeah, if you're really trying to get buy-in and you're really trying to get them to be excited and embark on eating healthier options and you know, moving around and asking about working out, we can't have these negative self-talk moments where, because they're always listening. It's like what you do is really what they're watching, observing. And so if I'm constantly there, you know, judging myself and man, I'm fat, man, I need to lose weight, man, I really could, you know, I could lift some more weights to build muscle, and everything I'm talking about myself is negative. You know, that's just going to rub them off the wrong way. And it should be a fun experience. It should be something that's inviting. It should be something that's positive. And, you know, we should be trying to really model and show them that this could be a fun, embarking adventure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think this is even more complicated than just that. I think that also seems kind of obvious to people that, like, you know, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't call myself fat in front of my child or beat myself up. I've had a lot of many conversations, I'm sure you guys have too, with actually parents that are making healthy and good choices, still communicating it wrong. For example, how many times you've had to talk to a parent who is weighing and measuring their food to track their macros, and the kid is curious to what they're doing. And then simply how the parent responds could also set them up for, like, oh, mommy needs to lose weight. Oh, why do you need to lose weight? And you position it like you need to get in shape or I need to lose weight, and that's why you're doing these things. You got to be even careful in a situation like that. And that's a family making healthy, good choices.
That's
because
right.
This is a new behavior I see mom doing, dad doing, and then their answer is, oh yeah, because I'm fat, or they say something like that. You got to be very careful.
I'm so glad you said that, because dysfunctional eating and poor health, mental health, actually is relatively high in fitness maniac households, just like it is in households that, you know, don't regard health at all because of the obsession component. In fact, that's the next point. The next point is the most important thing you can do with your child when it comes to health and fitness, more important than the food that they eat, the exercise they do, and we'll get to all that, right? But more important than the actual X's and O's or ones and zeros is the relationship they have with exercise and eating healthy. What you're trying to do is you're trying to raise a child that has a good relationship with exercise, where they view it in a healthy way, they view it in an enjoyable way, and they view eating healthy in a good way with a good relationship, because that's what's going to last for the rest of their life when they're out of your house. So how do I do that? Well, number one, when we're exercising, the most important thing is my kid enjoys the experience. That's more important than the workout itself. In fact, if we only do 5 minutes of exercise and they don't want to do anything else, that's okay. Because my goal is to create a relationship, or help them create a relationship with exercise, where as adults, they look back and they're like, man, I used to have great times in the garage with my dad, or when we were out in the field, throwing the ball or whatever. My dad wasn't, or my mom wasn't on me saying, you got to do 5 more and you got to work out and you got to do this thing. Now you can force your kid to work out. And I've seen parents do this, where you force your kid to do the exercises. You force your kid in a tyrannical way to do these things. But what the relationship that you will create or help them foster around exercise is one that will probably turn into rebellion later on when they're out from under your thumb. When they grow up and say, I'm not doing that anymore. You see this with a lot of behaviors, right? You see this with church, for example. You see adults who don't ever want to go to church again. Well, why? My parents forced me. I hated it. So I never want to go back, type of deal.
Yeah.
Or why don't you play sports anymore? God, as a kid, he used to play all these sports. My parents forced me to do it, and I hated it. And so I never want to do it again. So the most important thing you can do in regards to fitness and health is create an environment that fosters a good relationship. And it's more important than what you're actually doing in your garage gym or out in the field. It's literally the most important thing is my kid enjoying this experience, even if they're just sitting there because they don't want to do it, but I'm talking with them in between sets and we're having a good time. That's more important.
It's a tough line because you know the importance of it. And I came from a household where it was like everything was forced, like just like you said with church and with this and, you know, certain behaviors, like either you do this or you're kicked out of the house. And then that was like the gold standard for that. And so for me to kind of, you know, now model what are important for me and to my kids, like for me, I have to literally take it upon myself to show them the example of that. And then it's uncompromising. So, you know, also too, to be very clear and communicate like the importance of movement, the importance of fitness, the importance of like making those right decisions with eating habits and education of it, you know, without that infusion of force, but show them this is why I do this all the time. This is why, you know, and this is helping my body. And like the reason and the rationale with it, have that open communication instead of it being so closed off, black and white, like you do this or you don't do this and you're gonna get fat.
Stop using cookware that's messing with your hormones, give you microplastics, and just make you unhealthy. Go to From Our Place, the best cookware without any of those forever chemicals. By the way, try it out for 100 days for free. Return it if you don't like it. Click right here.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we share what that sounds like. I mean, what you guys are both saying obviously is right. With a healthy relationship with exercise and with also a healthy relationship with food, what I think is important is what does that sound like when you talk about because I think people that listen to this podcast, for the most part, I think are either already on a health and fitness journey or embarking on one, and probably a lot of them have kids, and they're probably going in their gym and working out in their house. They're probably making good food choices, weighing and maybe even measuring and tracking their macros. Mm-hmm. And so what does it look like when my son goes, Daddy, why are you weighing your food? Or why are you tracking that? Mm-hmm. What are the words that you're communicating to them that shows them that you have a healthy relationship with it and not that it's the unhealthy version of that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So Dad, why are you doing that exercise? Oh man, I love it. Feels really good. Yep. And then you wait. And then they'll ask you another question. What do you mean it feels really good? I feel stronger when I do it, or it makes my shoulders feel good. Hey Dad, why are you eating those foods? I love them. They taste so good. They make me feel good. What do you mean? How do they make you feel good? First of all, they probably won't ask that second question, but sometimes they do. Well, how does it make you feel good? Well, this food has a lot of X, Y, and Z, and that's how it affects the body. And I really like the way it makes me feel. Yeah. That's how it's communicated. Why are you weighing your food, Dad? I love eating this food, but sometimes I weigh it to make sure I'm getting the right amount. But don't worry, I know how to give you the right amount of your foods, and your body will tell you when you're eating the right amount. You know, that's kind of how it's communicated. But it does come from honesty, and it comes from a positive communication and positive behaviors around it. Not, why do you work out? I don't want to be fat. Mm-hmm. Why are you eating that way? I don't want to be unhealthy.
No. I love the idea of, you know, energy, sleep, strength, feeling better. These are the words that I'm using of why I'm doing the thing. Why I'm exercising, why I'm weighing and measuring food is because when Daddy does these things, I get the food that my body needs. I feel the best. I'm the strongest I am. Yeah. I'm more productive at work. I'm a better daddy for you. I'm and then the next layer or level to that is, how can I relate that to his life where he's currently at? You know how sometimes you get frustrated when you're doing your logos and you feel like you can't, or Legos, and you can't figure it out? Like when Daddy eats well and I pay attention to what I'm eating, I'm sharper. I'm better at work. Because I have the same thing too. When I'm at work, sometimes I'm communicating on the podcast and Daddy forgets a word. I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, oh, of course, I didn't feed my body the right nutrients that day. And when I feed my body good and I pay attention to those things, Daddy's better at these things at work. Similar to how you're better when you play that sport or you do that thing. I think helping them connect the dots to how it can also help in their life. It's like a subtle way of you dripping that to them to allow them to go, really? Well, what would I eat, or what should I do if I want to be better at basketball, or I want to be sharper with my Legos? Now you're inviting them in a way without really inviting them. You're just communicating to them why Daddy does it, and then they can make that connection.
Now, what's important to understand, though, with what we're saying is very little of what they're going to do comes from this conversation that we're having right now of us telling them. It's actually not as important as you think. It's more important to not say the wrong things, but it's less important. You don't need to say necessarily the right things because they just watch.
Yeah.
They watch.
That's 90%. 90% is just you being consistent with your behaviors.
And they might ask you a question, and it's just an honest answer. But it's not about, because I made this mistake early on as a parent where I was like, oh, I'm going to teach my kids. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to educate them. That's not going to make that big of a difference. It makes some kind of a difference, but not a big difference. The big difference
what you do.
Is just them watching you, what you're doing. And what's the relationship around food? Like when we eat, is my mom and dad stressed out? Yeah. Are they counting everything? Are they worried? Are they saying to themselves, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I could eat more, but I can't. I'm going to stop. I'm going to push that away. Or is eating this great experience where we're connecting together, we're enjoying it. It's not the stress thing. It's not this rush thing. It's not this finish everything on my plate thing. It's just this good experience. That's the most important thing. That's also the most important thing with exercise. Now, the question that always comes from people when you communicate this is, well, how do I give my kids what to eat? What do I put in front of them? And what if they don't want to eat it? Well, this is something I learned as an older parent later on with my younger kids that was so much more effective than my earlier approach with my older kids. And I learned this from an expert who communicated how the relationship with food was the most important thing that you could teach your kid. It's more important than actually what they're eating. What they're eating is important as well, but more important is the relationship, because they're going to grow up and at some point be adults in a modern society where they have access to everything. And so what they need to learn is how to navigate this access to everything. So the relationship with the foods that are around them is the most important thing to foster. So this was the strategy that I learned, and it's a really effective one that I came up with, or that I've been utilizing. And what it is you give them options, make sure that you approve of all the options. You want to give your child the feeling of autonomy. Like, I can choose to eat these things and I can choose not to eat these things, and I have choices in front of me. So you're essentially choosing the choices, but you're giving them the choices to pick from. Now, what do you put on the plate? Well, you want to put a protein on there because that's essential. You want to put something new on there because it's important that you foster a little bit of, exploration, because especially when they're really little, you don't want to get stuck in a pattern of eating the same things. You want them to kind of explore new things. And you know that they probably aren't going to eat it. They'll taste it, but they probably aren't going to eat it. And then you put something on there that you approve of, that they love, that you know for sure they're going to eat. So they always have a choice that they're going to eat that you approve of. So you give them 3 or 4 or 5 options. And the plate typically looks like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Then you put it in front of them, and then they choose to eat. And you let them pick, and you let them pick. And what's going to happen, here's the frustrating, challenging part for fitness parents, is your kid is going to pick, although you approve of all the options, they're going to pick the options that you approve of the least, and they're not going to approve the ones you want them to eat the most. And you have to be okay with that, because it's the long game. What you're playing here, the game that you're playing with your kids here, is the long game, not the short game. Not that let's eat as perfectly healthy as possible today, but rather I want to encourage you and help you learn how to eat healthy for the rest of your life. So you give them the options, and they pick and they eat. And what typically happens most of the time is they eat all of the thing that they love, and they eat a little bit of the stuff that you really want them to eat. But then over time, what happens, and again, I've done this, and there's data on this, they'll slowly start to experiment and pick other things, and they'll develop a nice wide breadth of things that they enjoy that are all within that category of foods that you approve of. This was very challenging for me growing up. I had 2 immigrant parents who the way that I was taught to eat was, that's your food, that's what you're gonna eat, and if you don't finish it, you're gonna sit here until you finish it. That's how I was brought up. Mm-hmm. So to do this to my kids and put them 5 options in front of them and watch them leave 4 of them untouched or barely touched and eat all of one, and then to let them go, okay, I'm done, it like ate inside of me. It was like this storm inside of me. But I stuck with it, and it's really resulting in some really, really good behaviors.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because I think there's so many unique situations for people. I think we can all tell. Like I bet we all are different with how we do this. Mm-hmm. Like I don't do it like that at all. It's very simple. It's what Katrina and I eat, Max eats. And the way I portion it on the plate is the priority. So it's very meat heavy. It has a good portion of vegetables, and then there's a starch or a carb or an apple slices or something that you're saying that maybe he loves, and it's the smallest portion. And it's like you eat your plate, we eat together, and we all sit here. He's asked questions in the past about why he has to eat his meat, and I've already taught him that this is what makes you strong and healthy and build muscle like Daddy does, and like when you want to pick up your toys and run and play, like, so we've made that connection of why the protein is valuable. And never had a problem with this, and it's never been this hard.
You force them?
Never, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, right?
Yeah, it's but it was, and I think it goes back to your original point, which that's been consistent since day one.
Yeah,
we never strayed away from that. Now, what's cool is that once you lay that foundation, we're coming up on 6 years, right? So by no means am I expert daddy through teenage years yet. I'm not there yet. But so far, I've now been able to allow him to introduce other things that I would not consider a great food choice. But because we've been so consistent with what is normal and what we eat every day, it's never been a battle. It's never, I want more, or I only want that, or refusing to eat something. It's like, this is what we eat. I think a lot of parents are afraid to not let the kid eat much. If Max tells me he's done eating, he's done eating, and I'm like, and then if he gets hungry again, it'll be in the microwave, and we can reheat it, and you can have it again. You don't get to go have a ice cream or a snack or something else like that. It's like, this is what we eat for dinner, and if you're full, you don't want to eat more, Daddy will put it in the microwave, and if you get hungry a little bit later, we'll finish it.
Such a new generational thing, because as we were brought up similar, it's like, you have to finish your plate, or otherwise you're going to eat it in the morning. And like, I'm like, ew, no, awful. Like, and so you're just sitting there staring at it forever. And then I'd find ways to get rid of the food through, so I knew that already. I knew my behaviors around it. And, initially I was trying to kind of balance that with my kids. Like, we're all eating the same thing. This is just how it's done. And all of it was like accounted for, same thing, portions, all that kind of stuff in terms of optimizing health. And, it was all kind of understood and everybody had this understanding. And then there was fighting and pushing back as they got exposed to more foods out there. But in one kid's more particular than another, and it kind of switches. And so the one kid that's the most particular, I started to kind of have this, which I didn't really like, and I didn't like this as an option, but now I understand it's probably the best option is we'll all eat, and it's the same food, but then if you seriously protest this food and you're not going to eat it, you got to go make yourself your own dinner. And so this has already been happening, and my youngest has had to do this many times. And he only is allowed like and it's a healthy option. It's like eggs, or it's like some kind of, meal that we already have that he knows how to make. He knows how to turn the oven on. He knows how to do all these things, but he has to be involved and active, because it's disrespectful, to, his mom that had put together this amazing meal for us all. And he knows that, but like, he's very particular about like his tastes and flavors and whatnot, but like understands the importance of why, this is all structured this way.
What's cool about this is that we all have on the surface different strategies, but there's one most important thread or piece that is consistent, which is autonomy and choices.
Yeah.
It's what you'll notice. They're all different options or different strategies, but none of them are force and eat and bad relationship. Right? The relationship they're developing is a good relationship with food where they have some autonomy, they feel some control. That's what stays with you as you become an adult. What you don't want staying with your kid as they become an adult is, I was forced this way, I hated it, it was a bad experience. I'm going to go rebel and do my own thing. Yeah. All right, so exercise. Let's talk about exercise. Now, okay, they're interested. They want to try some exercise. What are some of the best options? Some of the best options besides what they like doing the most are body weight and suspension trainer type exercises. They teach body awareness for kids better than free weights or especially machines. These are known as closed chain movements, where I'm moving my body around rather than moving a weight around. Now, both of them are good. Both of them strengthen the body. Both of them improve body awareness. But when you're a kid and you start to develop kinesthetic skills, they stay with you for a long time. So this is a really important time. Like if you do gymnastics, for example, as a child, you'll have more athleticism as a sedentary adult than you ever did, than you would as an active adult who never did any of these things as a kid. Because these are learned behaviors that stay somewhat permanent in the body and the brain. And body weight and suspension trainer exercises are excellent for this. Plus, children seem to enjoy them more, generally. They just seem to be more fun, especially suspension training.
It makes so much more sense, and it really the highest priority is getting them to learn to understand their body and control their body, because of the fact that they're on this crazy growth spurt, and who knows what stage they're in development, but they're always going to be able to be in tune with their body if we can have them do these specific movements where they understand their limitations, they're understanding the challenges that they're applying to themselves through their own body weight movements, where we start adding load and then it turns into a different type of experience for them.
I really think that this point blends with your next point. To me, it's like at this point, at this stage of their life, the exercise, body weight, suspension trainer, weight training is part of play. It's all play to me. It's at this. I'm not trying to get my kid to have great squat mechanics right now or do him. He's like so young and little that's so beyond him right now. I just want him to have a good relationship with, the family comes in the garage and we lift weights, and that could look like him coming over and just seeing if he could pick a dumbbell up or not, or hold something over his head, or can he hold on to the bar and how long can he hold his grip on? It's more play than it is exercise at that point for me. Is just and just building that healthy relationship with him, that this is a time we enjoy, that we like doing, that we get together as a family sometimes and do, that daddy or mommy are consistent with it. So he just sees us doing all of it. But I don't ever find myself, it's the same way that I have with the sports. I would love my kid to play sports, but I know better than to force him to do that. It's like, if he wants to play and kick the ball around, I'm there to do it. We do it for a little bit, and then he decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. And it's like, that's it. You know what I'm saying? It's not, there's no, we got to do more, or let's try this, or hey, do you want to do this? It's like, I'm going to do it. Hopefully he joins in a little bit. When he does, we're going to make it more like play and in a time of enjoyment. And then hopefully that lays the foundation for the deeper, bigger questions as he ages.
Yeah. What's crazy about this, and this is a tough one, I think, for parents to just reconcile, because we get tired, we get, overworked or whatever. But your kids, especially when your kids are under the age of 10, right? When they're little, your kids will play with you until you decide to stop. For the most part, they just want to hang out with mom and dad. Now they become teenagers, different story. But when they're little, if you want your kids to be active, it's far less effective to go tell them to be active. It's far more effective than to be like, let's go play. Yeah. Let's go ride our bikes. Let's go throw the ball around. Let's play hide and seek. Let's play chase. Let me throw the Frisbee. You go get it. And you can come up with strategies. Look, I'm a dad. I'm the expert at this. I can come up with strategies that require less activity for me and more activity for my kids when I get real tired, like wrestling. I lay on the ground. You try and hold me down. It requires very little from me with my really little ones. But your kids will play with you as long as you want. So playing with them is a wonderful way to get them to be active. It's also a wonderful way for you to be active. You see so many parents, counting the steps on their pedometers, and I got to make sure I hit 8,000 steps or 10,000 steps, and I got to make sure I be more active. You know what you could do with that? You could just go play with your kids. Yeah. You don't have to worry about walking on a treadmill, because you just went to the park for an hour with your kids and chase them around and look for sticks or whatever. So playing with your kids is a wonderful way for everybody. And it's not just the health aspect, the fitness aspect, like the bonding time and just the spending time that you have with your kids.
I think you're doing, it's pissed some people off, but whatever. I mean, I think you're doing a disservice to your family if you get on a treadmill and you walk for an hour and you have kids under the age of 10.
Yeah.
You got a kid. You got kids.
I ranted about that yesterday.
Bro, I'm serious. Like, if you're a parent and you get on a fucking treadmill and walk for an hour or run or elliptical or whatever you do, and you have kids under the age of 10, like, you're doing a disservice to your family. That's an hour more you could have spent engaging with them. That is going to
give you just as much activity.
It's going to give you way more in return. You're going to get the exact same amount of calorie burn that you're going to get for what you're selfishly doing that for. But more importantly, it's going to continue to build that relationship with your kid and encourage this healthy relationship with movement and activity yeah, that's like a shame on you if you do that, because your kid, like you said, if they're under the age of 10, I don't know a kid, one, that will turn down some sort of activity. And you don't have to overcomplicate. Yes, you might not have the kid who wants to go play soccer or basketball, like I don't, but absolutely my son will not turn down running up and down the stairs, or, chasing, wrestling, jumping off the couch into the beanbag. Like he definitely loves to do physical things, even if he's not an athlete and loves that stuff. And so I absolutely have to be doing that with him first before I'm choosing to do that.
Same exact, rant, but like too, even besides fitness and trying to kind of promote that as well, like showing them that you could have fun doing hard work. And so for me, it's like, we're going to load up the wheelbarrow and we're going to move some rocks and, and we're going to go out and, saw some logs. We're going to dig some holes. Like and this is all rigorous, hard work. But I'm having a great time, and so it's just it's a mentality. You're trying to sharpen this, and you're trying to show and model that like you don't have to suffer, and this is so horrible.
Totally. Hey, sorry to interrupt. Look, we have a free guide. It's the benefits of eating whole foods. This gives you a shopping list, what foods are best for proteins, fats, carbohydrates. There's recipe samples. It's all based on real, whole, natural foods, and it's a free guide. It's totally free. You can get it if you go to wholefoodsguide.com or by clicking on the link in the description below. Lastly, this is new. This is relatively new. In the past, when we were kids, which wasn't that long ago, when we were kids, activity wasn't competing with something that was better competitor. These days, screen time, iPhones, iPads, video games, they're so well engineered that given the option, most kids would pick the screen time over activity. Now, when I was a kid, that was rare. It was rare that kids would pick screen time. There had to be something exceptionally good on TV, which was rare, for a kid to be like, no, I'd rather watch this cartoon than go outside and play. We used to get grounded by getting sent to our room. These days, it's the opposite. A kid gets kicked off electronics and gets kicked out of their room to get grounded. So we are dealing with a different monster. And the only way that I can think that is effective around this is to put structures and time limits around screens. You're not going to outcompete them. That's the bottom line. Now, you might have that rare kid who doesn't like them and it's like, I'd rather go outside and hang out with you. But if you give them the choice of going on the iPad and playing these addictive video games that have billions of dollars of engineering put in them to make them super, super addicting, and you give them the option of going outside or doing that, you're going to lose. It's just like if you give your kid the option of candy and healthy food. Here, what would you rather have, kid? A bowl of strawberries or a bowl of Skittles? You're not being a good parent by giving them two choices, one irresistible, the other one not so hard to turn down in comparison. So the only strategy I know around screens is to have a time limit. And there's a lot of different ways you could do this. The way I do this in my house, my wife is really good at this, is our kids get 20 minutes and they have a timer and you get 20 total minutes a day. And you can choose to use them however you want. And there are choices that we approve of. So you can't choose whatever you want to do. And then when it's done, it's done. And after that, we do other things. But if you leave it up to your young kids to choose, here's what's going to happen to you. Hey, buddy, you want to get off the iPad and go play outside? They're going to hurt your feelings. Nah, I want to keep playing video. You're not going to win. It's going to turn into this like, you have to. So time limits, set them. And then based off of that, rather than competing, oh, you want to use your 20 minutes? That's fine. Go ahead and do that. And then when they're done, hey, what do you want to do? Let's go hang out.
I mean, it was almost 7 years ago that I was getting teased on this podcast for talking about a book called Irresistible. And so this has been like super passionate in a major conversation in my house. And I think of all the things we've talked about, I think it's the most important. I think it's the most dangerous thing that is out there for children today. And once the toothpaste is out, it's so hard to get it back in.
Super hard.
You know, we had a weekend, just this last weekend, we were up at the Truckee house. We invited a new couple that I'd never hung out with before. And it's my son's like new best friend. And the kid's like about 6 or 7 months younger than Max. And so it's great because he's definitely at Max's speed. Max is normally with older, bigger kids. And so first seeing a kid like that, actually seeing my kid tackle and wrestle a kid is like weird, you know what I'm saying? Because he's not that kid, right? So it was really cool. And they were up there 4 days with us. And I think it was the third day when I was sitting with the dad and I finally said something to him. I said, you know what? I noticed this whole trip, I've never seen your kid ask for an iPad or anything like that. Is that something that you guys have actively chosen to do? And he's like, oh yeah, no. He's like, he doesn't have one and we're not giving it to him yet. And I'm like, I love that. I said, because so many parents default to that right away because they know what a powerful, useful tool it can be. And I said, I'm such a fan of delaying that for as long as you possibly can, because I don't care how good you are, time limits or not. Once that toothpaste is out, it's out. Once those kids get a taste of that, what it does to their brain.
It's such an uphill battle.
It is such an uphill battle. And so if you're a parent and you're listening and you haven't opened Pandora's box, don't. And wait. And when you think it's time, wait longer. Like that is my advice when it comes to this, because the longer you wait and the more restrictive you are early, the easier this conversation is.
Totally.
If it is one of those things where they've gotten unfettered access.
It's a lot of parents. Right now, it's a lot of kids.
That's why it was so apparent to me. I was like, I've not met another kid that my son has hung out with that didn't get some sort of iPad break. I'm like, you guys have been with us for 3 days and the iPad has yet to be out for any of the kids. I love that because my son's cool because even though we do allow him some of that time, he gets so little of it that if he's playing and having fun, he doesn't even think twice about it. But I've also seen him with other friends where that is such a regular thing in their life. Even if the kids are playing, the kid ends up wanting a break for an iPad, which that blows my mind. Is like these kids are playing and engaging, having a good time, and because that other kid is so addicted to the iPad, he ends up wanting to have an iPad break from playing, which is like crazy. So it was so unique to see another parent. By the way, the guy works for Netflix too, so that's the reason why. Very in tune.
Sees it.
Very, very in tune.
He knows what goes into that engineering.
Exactly what he said to me. He says, oh man, I know how addictive those series. I know how addictive they are for me, and I'm a grown adult who's aware of it that works for the company.
That's the self-awareness part. Is if you're a parent or you're going to become a parent, and you struggle with your your time on your phone,
yeah, it should say
and
something.
you waste a lot of time on it, you think your little kid is going to have the ability to stop when you can't? Yeah. It's no different than allowing your child unfettered access to candy. What do you think your kid's going to do if you just give them candy? If you just put candy in front of them all the time, they're going to eat that, and they're not going to eat anything else. And that's the thing.
Let me tell you, I see that being paired all the time is candy, or not candy, Cheez-Its and just processed snacks with the iPad. Yeah. It's like you have no idea.
That's a dopamine storm.
And you see I see kids, and this is what's tough because you get parents that want to get their kids into exercise because they can tell they're already overweight at a young age. But that's not why they are. It's not because they need to go weight train or do something or run to lose weight. It's that some point in their life, they've probably got unfettered access to food like that. And more than likely, it's also been paired with inactivity because most kids at this age, if they play like crazy and they don't sit in front of a screen, even if they have Cheez-Its and some of these processed snacks, they're going to be fine. Yeah. They burn so many calories and stuff like that if they're playing. But where you get in trouble as a parent is when not only do you allow unfettered access to the iPad, but you also allow unfettered access to these highly processed snacks.
What a good
now you
point.
have a perfect storm.
What a good point, because our generation was actually, for food, it was common for our generation to have unfettered access to garbage. As kids in the 90s, it was very common for you to just have total access to snacks and processed foods. I mean, that was like most kids' lunches was that. Yeah. But the difference was, because the obesity rates with children in the 90s was significantly lower than it is today. Chronic diseases were significantly lower in the 90s than they are today, even though we had tons of processed food and garbage. The difference was we were active as hell. It was rare to see a kid sit down all day long unless they were sick. I mean, you drive through a neighborhood in the 90s after school, and you had to be careful with how you drove because kids were all over the place. You don't see that anymore. So what a great point. And you combine two of them together, perfect storm.
So
for
dangerous.
Terrible health. Yeah.
Got some questions here. The first one is, I have dual custody and my ex doesn't agree with my approach to health and fitness. How do you suggest navigating this?
This is really hard.
Hard.
This is really hard. You know, I have dual custody with my older kids, and although we mostly agree with nutrition and stuff like that, there are other topics we don't. So I know exactly what this is like. So here's what the data shows, and here's, to the best of my understanding from what I've learned, the most important thing that you can do in this situation is have a good relationship with their parent. That's more important than you having a bad relationship with that parent and forcing them to do all these other things.
Yeah.
It's more important for your child's health. Okay, so keep that in mind.
Not
okay?
only that, Sal, but they're more likely to buy into your strategy if you approach it that way too.
That's right.
Right? If you, and you know this, right? If you're pushing back with your ex, arguing and fighting and telling her how she's parenting is wrong, she's definitely not going to buy into you. Versus if you have a good relationship with her and she sees what you're trying to implement, maybe you get some buy-in.
Or Adam, I know people like this. These are horror stories where mom forces dad through the risk of losing custody.
Oh, wow.
Because she disagrees with certain things that he's doing. And what she wants him to do is important. It is a big deal, but it's less important than her having a good relationship with the dad. So that's number one. Number one is having a good relationship with the parent. Number two, if you can have some influence, then do so. If you can't, then you do your best at your home, and then they go to the other home, and then they do that over there. And then what you hope, and what probably will happen is, although 50% of the time your kid is eating garbage, your kid is inactive, your kid is on technology and iPads all the time when they're over there, and when they're little, they're comparing. This is what little kids will do. I love it at dad's house more. I love it at mom's house more. She lets me do whatever I want. You're so strict. You're so whatever. But you show them love. I'm sorry. This is the way we live with it, whatever. As they get older and become old enough to start to see things, they start to look back and go, oh man, mom's house was healthy. I like the way mom.
When you get older, they will interpret that as dad loved me more.
You are 100% correct.
And
it's actually neglect. And you can look again at the data on this. When mom and dad don't put parameters around their children, even though they say, no, this is what I like, I can do whatever I want, mom doesn't bother me. When they're adult, talk to any adult from a situation like this, they'll tell me, I thought my dad didn't care about
Wouldn't
me.
you agree that this is another conversation I was having with this new dad that I met. They have a blended family, and so he has a daughter from a previous marriage who's older. And we were talking about this, and he was saying this is one of the biggest challenges. But he's like, it took me years to realize that the biggest challenge was not so much the kid adhering, it was my own stuff. It's probably like you've talked about this before. Like the hardest part is you feel like I don't want to be the dad who's with all the rules and strict. I don't want
my kid to like me.
Yeah, I want my kid to like me. So really the hardest part is less about the adherence from them and less about them following the rules. It's more about your own shit, about how you feel. And he goes, once I got over that and realized like she didn't really care that much, it wasn't a big deal. But
it sucks to be the parent where the kid's like, oh, you got all the rules. Oh, and you're like, oh my God, they enjoy it too much. But it's funny, it's just like with my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, I finally really got strict with parameters, and my relationship with her grew because she feels cared for. Yeah. So even if they don't say it, by the way, they might not even express it to you, but that's the case. So you be good with your side, have a good relationship with their side if you can. If you can have influence, great. But if you can't, the relationship with them is most important. But if you can't even do that, then just do the best job you can on your side.
How do I turn the ship with my teenage kids?
This is where it gets tough.
Yeah.
So you're listening to this, your kid's 14, like, oh, okay, we need to change things. Yeah. First and foremost,
they think they know everything.
Because teenagers they're rebellious like a 2-year-old, except they're smarter, and they'll call your bluff more effectively than your 2-year-old will, right? So dealing with a teenager is a completely different monster. And so it starts with this. You change your lifestyle first, and then you do the shopping and you change the choices in the home, and that's how it starts. Now, when it comes to electronics, you have more power than you think. The difference is this. With a 2-year-old, taking something away will turn into a 30-minute tantrum. With a teenager, taking something away will turn into a 30-day tantrum. Okay? So be prepared for your kid
gotta weather the storm
to act like they hate you for weeks, usually a week, but sometimes longer. Be okay with it. Make sure you communicate it with love and empathy. I know this sucks. I know it's been one way for so long, and now it's different. It's difficult for change. I totally get it. I understand why you're upset, but stay consistent is the best advice I could give. But this is hard. Like once you were living one way so long, and then you got to switch. Just know that you're going to deal with this. Is going to be like a process, probably a 6-month process.
Yeah, and it's a constant battle for a variety of different things that get presented, but it's just the consistency. And if you're just starting with that same kind of energy. Well, this is what we do in this house, and I think you know the rules, and we just remind and reiterate, and then just consistently deliver. And then, you know, when it comes up and then the pushback happens, it quells quicker.
Yes,
next time.
each time. Yeah, you're right.
So just think about that. Like, it's initially really tough for that initial impact. But if you just keep consistently delivering the same message with the same energy and love, and they understand that, then, you know, the pushback definitely goes
You're
away.
right. I did so with just personal story with my daughter. It's probably now 2 or 3 months ago. I decided I got to get even more. I got to put more boundaries around her use of her phone. She already had limits on what she could see, what she could do, and it was you know, she didn't like that already. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let her use her phone anywhere in a closed room. It's going to be has to be in a public space. So she's no longer allowed to be on her phone in her room or anywhere where the doors are closed. Whereas before, she had limits on things, but I would allow her to go in her room and use her phone and stuff like that. So you can imagine a 15-year-old girl who previously was allowed to do this. Now suddenly I drop the hammer. I'm like, you're not allowed to use your phone. So you can imagine the pushback that I got. And she was mad at me for weeks. She was mad at me, but I was consistent, and she pushed, testing to see if there was any weaknesses, testing to see if there were, and I stay consistent. And now a few months later, it's not even a question, and it's not a problem, and it doesn't get raised anymore. And she's much less likely to rebel as strongly now when I bring up other things, because she saw but you have to weather the storm, because you'll get that storm.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. I think this is by far the hardest. And I don't think I even have great advice for this. I do have an opinion on what I think is the most important thing of all the stuff that we're talking about. I still think this kind of goes back to some of the other stuff that we're saying, where this really, you have to be consistent first. Because what comes to mind when you think about a parent who lived an unhealthy lifestyle, eating whatever, not exercising, way overweight, then all of a sudden decides to make a lifestyle change, and then you want to make your whole family buy in.
Yeah.
You got to remember that they saw the other version of you for much longer than this new version of you. Same thing goes for the person who was unsaved. They were atheists, or they did all these bad things, and then also they become a Christian, and now I want to make my family all go to church and be a Christian.
They're going to wait to see if it sticks.
That's right. And so here, this is what you're trying to do. Now all of a sudden you care about tech. Now all of a sudden you care about what we eat, but my whole life you'd never said anything about it. So to me, all the strategies you guys said sound great, but number one has to be, you got to be so consistent. And my goal, if I'm that parent, is, can I, and just like it would be for trying to win somebody over to Christianity or win somebody over into fitness, is like, can I be so good and so consistent that they ask questions, that they go, man, Dad is just different. Like, ever since you started exercising, Dad, and eating, like, you are just so, like, can I exude that so much, right? Same thing goes for like someone who's become a Christian. Like, I don't want to try and tell them what they need to do. I'm just going to live that life, and hopefully they see the light from that and they ask the question like, God, Dad, you're so different.
You know what's funny? You know what's important about that is, so what goes along hand in hand with that is, choose to make choices you can stick to.
Yeah.
So don't make crazy choices that you're like, am I gonna be able to do this in 2 months? Because your teenage kids
will be watching.
They're so you're trying to weather the storm. So are they. Oh, well, Dad's doing this new thing here. I'm sure in 30 days he'll change his mind.
You got to adhere to it. Yeah.
So maybe don't change everything all at once.
Yes.
Maybe it's like we go on a family hike on Sunday or whatever, or I'm doing this one small change that I know I could stick to, because the worst possible thing you could do is waffle back and forth, because then you're screwed.
I mean, you're trying to close them, right? You're trying to close them on your ideas. And we teach this when we teach trainers sales. Like, the best way to close somebody is to get them to ask you questions, to ask you, what does it cost to get a personal trainer? Like, I don't want to have to try and sell them on why they need me. And so my goal is always, can I do a better job of showing them how valuable I am, or how valuable this way of life is? That's the way to go. Because if I can always improve on myself. I can be more consistent. I can do more of these things. I can be a happier, better dad, all this stuff. And then eventually get them to go, what is different about you? Or what's going on? And then I have the opportunity to be like, well, you know, son, this is what I've done in my life lately, that I didn't realize how much all that time on Instagram and all the stuff, and like it was bringing my mood down. And I tell you what, if it comes from that way, and you present it like that, I bet you they connect. I don't know a teenager who has been on social media and has not allowed social media to affect them emotionally. And so if they hear from their dad that he recognized that in his own life and is now making changes in his life.
Or if they see it more importantly, dad is better.
Yeah, exactly. Or they see it and feel it, they're far more likely to follow your lead than if all of a sudden, you're on week 1 of this new life and you're like, here's all the rules. Yeah. We're none of this, none of that. Luck. Yeah, good luck with that.
We have a brand new MAPS program, MAPS Transform. This is a 90-day transformational program. Go from before to after, from step 1 to the end, fat to fit. MAPS Transform is live right now. Go to mapstransform.com. But because it's a brand new program, you can get it for $70 off. Use the code TRANSFORM70. We will also throw in 2 free things, Adam's 90-day Recomp journal and our MAPS Transformation Diet Guide. One more time, mapstransform.com. The code is TRANSFORM70. All right, here comes the show.
My kids are picky eaters. Do you have any strategies?
Yeah, try to give them options that you think they might pick from and slowly move towards new options. So now this can be really hard if they've been quote unquote picky eaters for 10 years and they've always eaten chicken nuggets and, whatever forever. But this is easier when they're younger. But give them 2 or 3 options, one of which they like, the other 2 that you think they might like, and then let them eat what they want, and then take it from there, slowly introducing new things. But here's the challenge with the picky eater thing. Well, if I don't give my kid all of what they want, they won't eat. That's not true. No. Your kid's not going to starve.
No, they won't.
They're not going to starve.
And you know what's crazy about this?
They'll get hungry.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you guys experienced this? Yeah. How many times have you been so hungry that the Brussels sprouts are so good? Yeah, like the dish that you thought wasn't that good all of a sudden is amazing because you're hungry. You allowed yourself to get that way. So I think a lot of that too is parents always fear that, like, oh God, if they don't eat this meal, they're going to starve. It's like, no, they're not going to starve.
This is a generational thing because, in a couple generations ago, this was a real thing. Like it was a real thing that my kids might starve. So if you don't eat all this, then they're not going to be food for a few days. So I think that's where we get that from. Yeah. But I mean, look, here's the deal. Look around. You live in a modern society, look around. Are people dying from starvation or are they dying from too much?
Yeah.
So they're not going to starve. So you give them a little bit of what they want, maybe start to restrict it a little bit. Instead of 5 nuggets, you get 2 nuggets. I want more. Oh, that's all we have, buddy. I'm sorry, but we got these other options. I don't want those. Okay, well, if you're hungry, let me know. We'll eat more of them, whatever. Yeah. And after a few days or a week or whatever, they tend to change a little bit.
What are some healthy snack ideas for on the go?
Oh my God. Nuts, cheese, fruit.
Beef jerky.
Jerky. That's
any
like
kind of protein. Yeah.
They're great. Especially fruit. Like most kids like fruit. But fruit, nuts, cheese.
Cheese sticks.
Jerky. Yeah, dude. It's like hard-boiled eggs. My kids love hard-boiled eggs. Mm-hmm. Anything that stays in a package for a while.
Greek yogurt. My son loves Greek yogurt.
Oh yeah, yogurt.
Loves Greek yogurt. I mean, I think this is important. I have friends that, Katrina and I, we have meal times, and if he's hungry between a meal and wants a snack, he has certain snacks that he has access to, and we've created those options.
We do the same thing. We have like a little fridge.
Yeah, he has a low basket in the pantry that he can go reach and get. And even then, like we're even mindful of like how much that we're like, okay, you can have one of those before we eat in an hour, or mommy can make you dinner now if you're that hungry. If you're that hungry, we can eat dinner now, or you can have one of your snacks that you have over there. And so that's kind of how we manage this. But again, it's the options. It's the option is choosing all those options you guys said, and having them the ability to have access to that. The thing that gets dangerous is the Lay's, Doritos, and chips, Cheez-Its, and these snacks that are so palatable. These kids can just,
especially if you're eating them and you're giving your kid the cheese stick.
Can't have them in the house,
and they're seeing you eat the candy or whatever.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Yeah. It's too powerful a thing to fight.
All right, I know you liked that episode. If you did, check this one out. 30% body fat for men. This is way too high. This is actually a bit high for women as well. So in today's episode, we're talking about how you can go from 30 to 10. What is 10% body fat? This is when you have a visible six-pack. Can you go from 30 to 10%? Yes, it's possible, but not if you guess along the way. So we're going to talk about how you can do that in today's episode.
Now, there's a huge range, right, of like body types.
Yes.
Some people can run a little bit heavier or a little bit higher body.